I think it's Ali's signing. Okay, you guys ready?
Yes, sir.
Call to order this regular meeting of the Monument Board of Trustees, Monday, October 7th, 2019. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Hogan, will you take roll, please?
Mayor Wilson,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Here.
Trustee Bornstein,
Yes.
Trustee Clark,
Here.
Trustee Koopman,
Here.
Trustee Romanello,
Here.
Trustee Stevens.
Here.
Before us, we have an agenda and a consent agenda. Is there any modifications or motions?
I move to make 6B a consent agenda item.
We have a motion to move 6B to consent agenda. Does the board agree with that?
Yes.
That's fine.
Okay. Item 6B will be moved to consent agenda. Any other modifications?
I'd like to make a modification under Board of Trustee comments to read out and get decisions from the board on action items requested for CML.
You want that under Board of Trustee comments?
Should it be under authorization items?
Or discussion items.
It's a discussion item.
Okay.
Let's move to discussion items. Item E. Does the board agree with that?
Yes.
Yes.
CML
Action items.
action items will be item 8E. Any other modifications or a motion to approve?
Motion to approve consent agenda as modified.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Clark,
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Koopman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Trustee Romanello.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. First item on the agenda, proclamation. Community Planning Month proclamation. Ms. Jones.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board of Trustees. I'm excited to bring to you a proclamation tonight for Community Planning Month. Community Planning Month is designated for October and recognized across the country. It's particularly fitting this year as the town is beginning our very large new planning project with the Land Development Code rewrite process. And our first official meeting on that will be Wednesday night with the Planning Commission.
Excellent. Did the boards have any issues with this proclamation?
None.
Trustee Clark, would you read the proclamation, please?
Absolutely. Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places. And whereas community planning and planners can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work, live, play live. And whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be equally involved in making choices that determine the shared vision of their neighborhoods. And whereas the full benefit of planning require public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the month of October is designated as a National Community Planning Month throughout the United States of America and its territories. And whereas the American Planning Association and its professional institute, the American Institute of Certified Planners, endorse National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementation make to the quality of our neighborhoods and environment. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of the Planning Commission and other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the town of Monument. Now therefore, the Board of Trustees of the Town of Monument, Colorado hereby proclaims October 2019 is hereby designated as Community Planning Month in the Town of Monument in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month.
That is okay. Thank you, Ms. Jones. Recognitions, Employee of the Month, Mr. Shetfield.
It's actually gonna be me.
Oh, okay.
Steve's not ready for prime time, so.
Really?
The employee we were gonna recognize this month is Nathan Ashu, but he's apparently running late today. And so I'd like to ask the board if, when he shows up, if I could squeeze that in at some point later.
We'll move that item to make it D now? Or is he just running late, or?
Well, that's what we're trying to find out.
Rose was wrecked at the gap, and so I think a lot of people might have been caught up in it.
Okay, we will just postpone that item for the time being.
Okay.
Hundred and 40th Anniversary Volunteers, Ms. Van Hoek.
Good evening, Mayor, trustees. We would like to thank our volunteers who worked with us to collect stories of Monument from some of our longtime residents. The work began in April of 2018 and wrapped up at our 140th celebration in June. The committee created a booth highlighting the monument's history, shared the stories, and offered historic walking tours during the event. So would you please join me in thanking our volunteers who worked on this project, and would you please join me up here at the front. Mr. John Howe, Mr. Michael Winefield, Ms. Sharon Williams, Ms. Linda Case, Ms. Susan Miner, and Ms. Sandy Coyne. So we have little tokens of appreciation for your hard work. Oh, no, not. And of course, these are not all in order. So this is for Mr. Howe. Thank you guys for your help. We appreciate all the hard work. Right here, yep. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say that we were the second most attended event at that day, but the most popular was when one of our trustees was in the dunk tank and really threw the crowd. I won't name him, but.
Thank you guys for what you do.
Thank you for that, Mr. Howe.
Item C, Tri-Lakes Cares Recognition, Ms. Chapman.
Good evening, Mayor, trustees. I wanted to take a quick opportunity to present an award to the Town of Monument. We, every year at our volunteer appreciation event, acknowledge all of our volunteers and their hard work and highlight many of the ones that stand out and have done exemplary roles with our organization in giving us blood, sweat, and tears. And every year we have an award that goes to an outside community collaborative partner.
And so this year, we've chosen the Town of Monument to receive that award. It's the only outside entity that is actually acknowledged in our volunteer appreciation event. That event is kind of sacred to us, acknowledging our internal volunteers. But the Town of Monument has really kind of stepped up and helped us in a variety of different fashions, in a variety of areas that we've needed help. Everything from providing translation services to help us communicate better with some of our clients who speak different languages, to using a vehicle to help us transport an item that we needed to be brought over to our organization, helping to pack our snack pack bags, helping to sponsor client appreciation and provide some workforce to help us manage that. And we really wanted to just say thank you for going up above and beyond and really helping us provide the services that we do to the community. It really takes a community for us to provide them, and we couldn't do it without you guys. So just as a token of our appreciation, we wanted to recognize the Town of Monument as our Collaborative Partner of the Year Award. And Mayor Wilson and Mike Foreman came over to our event along with Madeline to accept this award on behalf of all of you guys. But I wanted to share with the rest of you guys in the community to let you know that we wanted to just say our thanks and appreciation for your partnership. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also, I'd like to recognize all the employees that volunteered for this. Almost every department, I think, has been part of this. Our police department, public works, planning, administration, everybody has been involved in going out there, and we really appreciate their attitude and their volunteerism. Thank you very much.
It's a little difficult with two computers.
Presentation for Monument Police Department, Ms. Cunningham.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you for this opportunity to finally present this check to the Monument Police Department. On the 2nd of June, we held our second annual Cirque du Monument, which was put on by Gallery 132 along with lots of other sponsors in town. This carnival-like event was free to the community. All the activities were free, the food was free, and each of the vendors had tip jars out, and all the tips that we received went as a fundraiser towards the Tri-Lakes Monument Fire Department and the Police Department. Tri-Lakes Monument Fire Department has already sent a member of its crew to peer-to-peer training. I believe it was in August. And so tonight I'd like to present the Police Department with a check for $1,200 in order for them to help pay for some equipment. So, on behalf of Gallery 132 and all the community managers here in town, I'm presenting you with this check. Do it as you wish, hopefully to buy some equipment, but show their appreciation for this.
We absolutely have quite a bit of need for this, and we'll put it to great use.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Item number 7, resolution number 35-2019, a resolution initiating annexation and setting a hearing date for the Board of Trustees of the Town of Monument to determine whether annexation of an area known as Fire Station 1 meets requirements of state law. Mr. Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Board of Trustees. You may recognize, but Chief Trudy's in the audience, and he'll be, hopefully, if you have any questions as to exactly what his intentions are, I'm sure he can answer those. Laura? Okay, This is an annexation, as the mayor just read that title. It's a resolution. What I'd like to do first of all, just really quickly, is put this in context. The first thing that happens is an applicant submits a petition. Certain requirements have to exist. In this case, they do. Second thing that happens is the Board of Trustee considers a resolution. That's what you're doing tonight. That resolution then sets forth a hearing date to determine the eligibility of it based on state law. And then at that meeting, another hearing is set on an ordinance, at which time, if it's going to be annexed, the ordinance is passed. So here's the property. It's a little less than an acre. It's got Fire Station 1 on it. It's surrounded on the east and north by town limits. It's about a half mile west of Beacon Lake Road on 105. And that's the property that they'd like to annex. And so again, this is the first step. If you desire to continue on to the other steps, pass this resolution, and your resolution directs staff to do certain things, advertising, notices, things like that, to prepare for the next meeting, which would be, I think, mid-November, maybe late.
November 18th.
18th.
Okay.
November 18th.
Right. So with that, do you have any questions of what the material I've given you? I'll answer those. If you wanted to discuss the intentions of the district with Chief Trudy, you can do that.
I would be, I know we're just setting the date for it with this resolution, but what are the benefits to this?
We're all rely on the chief to be able to describe.
Can we halt on the chief first? What is the benefit to the town? And then I'd like to hear what the benefit from the chief is.
Well, there are certain other steps like an annexation agreement, as you may recall from the previous ones we've done. At that point, we're more able to decide what is the town going to be obligated to do? What is the owner applicant going to be able to offer? But right now, I'm sure the chief has his own motives he'd like to describe to you.
Okay.
In other words, I haven't determined
Chief, or do you want to just
any
set the
benefit
date?
to the town.
Do you guys want to hear from the chief, or would you like to just move forward with setting the date?
No, I'd like to hear from the chief, of course.
That's fine.
Okay. Chief?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight and for you to consider this. Plain and simply, we're in the process of going through an expansion program right now related to the entire district. And one of the first steps that we're doing is going through a remodel and a little bit of an expansion of that particular fire station there. Simply speaking, the reason behind the annexation was when you look around us, as Larry said, Palmer Lake has actually annexed the property to the west of us, and the town of Monument has the property to the north and to the east of us there. So we end up being this lone lot all by ourselves in an unincorporated area where anything that we have to do, we actually have to go through an entire county commissioner and an entire process with a much more complicated system in place than what the town has. And I think that over the last few years, we've done quite a bit, and I know the town has done quite a bit with us to help improve relationships. And it just makes sense for us to kind of fill this hole that's in there right now and basically put the county off in the distance, not necessarily that there's any issues with them, except that it's just a much more complicated process, and we would rather work with the town in the current issue as well as anything in the future that may happen, and just have a one-on-one relationship with you. I mean, it's pretty simple on that.
Okay.
Just one question. The property, 105 going east, from there to the railroad tracks, whose property is that?
That is, I believe that's, I think it's Monk Construction.
I'm sorry?
Monk Construction, I believe owns the lot.
Volmer Properties, I think is the actual name.
Oh, no, I'm just asking.
Town limits.
Yeah, town limits. That is not the town of Monument.
Yes.
That is the town of Monument.
It's in the town of Monument.
So the town of Monument does then come right to that line where your station is.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You answered my question then. Thank you very much.
Any additional questions, or do we have a motion?
Motion, resolution initiating annexation and setting a hearing date for the Board of Trustees of the Town of Monument to determine whether annexation of an area known as Fire Station 1 meets the requirements of state law. And that was resolution number 35-2019.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Koopman,
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
That motion passes 7-0. That hearing will be held on November 18th. Discussion items, contract and purchasing, Mr. Foreman.
Mayor and Board, one of the things staff has been working on and Bill's been working on really hard is our town contract and purchasing policy. Municipal, Section 3.08 of the Municipal Contracts of the Town Code establishes guidelines for purchasing and contracting for the town. The criteria set in the code is outdated and does not address the current needs of the town in regard to purchasing materials and services and defining contracting policies. We'd like the board staff is recommending the Board of Trustees review the draft contract and purchasing policy and provide any guidance for changes or additions to the document to allow for approval of the revised policy. Staff will then present an ordinance to update the applicable sections of Town Code under Section 3.08 to align with the new policy. Just, a lot of the things that we do today really aren't, traditional, I think, before me and Bill got here. And so we made some changes, came up with a policy, and want to present this to you, let you take a look at it, see if you have any changes, see if you see any need for changes, and then we'll put that into an ordinance and bring that to you.
Do you want that now, or do you want it
I
emailed
just
to you?
I just need you to give me direction that we're going to bring this back to you in an ordinance form. If you have any changes or anything like that, you can email those to me.
Okay. Did anyone on the board have any changes they wanted to discuss, get clarification on?
Now, what's the difference between this and the review of our ordinances that we're going to be doing?
This is just one ordinance that we're looking at, so it's not the entire planning code or anything like that. It's just one code. And this was something that we felt like that we needed to move on immediately so that we can come up to current standards.
Is this, the change, is this reflective to dollar amounts by which the empowerment of personnel has authorization?
The town manager, yes, sir.
Okay, so,
Yep.
so I do know that this is something the board spent a lot of time on, going back and forth. So it might be good for us to see what the new proposal is and
Right.
then be able to send comments to yourself.
Definitely.
And the new ordinance would follow this.
Exactly, unless you make changes.
Okay. Was there any other discussion on this? Okay.
Thank you.
Please send the town manager any questions or clarifications you might have. When are you planning that ordinance to come forward?
November 18th.
November 18th. So send them all your changes on November 17th.
Mr. Mayor, my apology, but that's in our board packet as far as the proposed.
It is.
It is.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Ms. Jones, preliminary final PD site plan for Home Place Ranch Phase 1. Are you taking that one?
Yes.
instead? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this on? Okay, thank you.
What is it called? Which one?
Board of Trustee presentation. It's the page that shows 204 on
Thank you. I've asked the town clerk to place on the overhead some of the information. The Board of Trustees has this information, and we made some copies that are available in the back of the room. The point of this discussion is to revisit the ordinance 28-219, an ordinance approving a preliminary final PD site plan for Home Place Ranch. And we need to revisit this discussion for a variety of reasons. And the first thing I'd like to do is to place this into a context. So the Board of Trustees primarily has two roles, a legislative role and a quasi-judicial role. A legislative role is the role where you basically enact policy. A quasi-judicial role is where you apply previously made policy. In reviewing the Home Place Ranch application, you review that in your quasi-judicial capacity. And in so doing, there are certain requirements associated with that review. And they are that basically that first, that you act like a judge and sitting in a quasi-judicial capacity and make your decisions solely based on the evidence that was presented to you at the public hearing. So there's a very strict evidentiary requirement, and you have to rely on the decision, as the basis for your decision, the information that was presented at the public hearing on September 16th. In addition to that, like a judge, when in rendering a decision, you have to both make very clear your decision and also, and perhaps even more importantly, make very clear the basis for it. And one of the reasons we're looking back and going back to that is to provide that opportunity. And then the third piece is to, as part of the quasi-judicial decision-making process, is it's based on the assumption that all of the decision makers are impartial and able to follow these basic rules of basic due process and basic fairness. You go to the second page. What I'm going to show you up on the slide is it's a Word document. It's the section 2.04030 of the town board, the town's code, and it's in particular the rules of conduct for public hearings. And I'd like to explain to you how those apply to where we are. So basically, the Home Place Ranch application, they had the presentation, they had the staff presentation, they had the public hearing, they had the opportunity for the applicant to respond to public hearing, and we're essentially at step G. Board of Trustees discussion, disposition, and application of matter. And now the question for you, basically the question is where do we go from here? And at this point, you have essentially two options. Your option is to basically make very clear your decision and the basis for it, and without the help of staff but based solely on the information that was presented to you at the last meeting, and I'll help you guide you through that process procedurally. So your option one is to make a decision, and the option two is to grant the developer's request for a continuance. You have basically, you're at a Y in the road. You can either go forward and make a decision based on the information already before you, if you feel like that's sufficient, or you can give the developer an opportunity to present, and the public the opportunity to present more information. If you choose to extend the public hearing and grant the request for a continuance, that continuance will be held. That continued public hearing would be reset and renoticed. Resetting means it would be reset to a date certain, which is November 18th, and it would be renoticed under the provisions of the code. So basically, all of the letters going out to all the neighbors would go out, and we'd have, for the most part, an opportunity to re-engage in the conversations that we had on September 16th regarding the merits and the merits of the application. So we could basically continue the discussion and grant the developer's request, or move on to a decision that would dispose of this and resolve this, at least this iteration, this evening. Now would be an appropriate time to make a motion whether you want to go forward or grant the continuance request.
Question. So what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that the questions that this board asked during the public hearing didn't give a clear enough picture as to the concerns that these trustees had that helped us come to the formation of our disposition and the action that was taken, which in fact was inaction, and the motion failed. So the item that was before us failed.
Okay.
And it ended that night. Now, what you're saying, the concern is you're not clear, or someone's not clear as to why it failed. Is that correct?
I think that's fair. I would say that basically reasonable people can disagree as to the disposition from the last meeting. I would agree that, and I think it's a fair interpretation, that Robert's rules, and there's a provision within the code that basically defaults to Robert's rules that suggests that if there's something has a lack of a motion, it fails. However, remember, we're in a quasi-judicial realm. And within a quasi-judicial realm, we have special and unique obligations imposed upon us. And one of those unique obligations is to follow and apply the town code. And the town code is very specific in this regard. And the town code requires the board to state whether we approve with conditions, or deny. So we have to pick one of those doors. And I think there's reasonable disagreement as to what door was picked. But also, I think, and perhaps even more importantly, is that in a quasi-judicial capacity, the judge not only has to render a decision, but explain the decision. And I think that's what we're lacking. And that's what I'd like to have the board revisit and make very clear through a board action, what are the what decision was made, but more importantly, the bases for the decision.
So you're basically, last time we acted in a legislative capacity, and you're asking us to do a judicial capacity at this point.
No, I would say that we could have made a more clear record, and I'd like to revisit so that we could make a more clear record.
So a question that I have, based on the board in the last meeting, area of concern, where no action was taken, was obviously from the drainage scenario, and also the secondary was as far as safety in and out, not only vehicles, but residents of that nature. So what I hear you saying, and what I understand, basing that the developer understands those two premises, would it not make sense then to bring a motion for continuance, to bring it back, allowing them to prepare something a little bit more specific? Because if I'm not incorrect, those were the major issues which left us to just table the topic.
And that's my understanding of the developer's intent and request, and the basis for their request for a continuance is essentially to have a second bite at the apple to make more clear and have an opportunity to answer your questions and more in depth.
Which is the right thing to do, now that they have an understanding.
I think a continuance is an appropriate response to the situation, and it's something that's a legal remedy that's available to you. So you can do that if you like.
We have some questions down here? No? Oh, okay, sorry.
So, Mr. Rivera, if we go ahead with a reset and a renotice, does the applicant take into account the comments that were made by the public and by the board at the last meeting, and is, instead of just repeating the discussion we had last time, or the comments we had last time, would there be new information presented based on the comments heard?
I think the board cannot control what is presented. However, it would be wise for the developer to take heed of the comments.
Am I already seeing in B, approved with conditions, that these are different from what was proposed to us before?
No, they're the same.
Okay, they're the same, okay.
Additional questions for the board?
I would just say to the board, I think based from the residents, from the board's understanding, knowledge, and the developer maybe having a very good baseline of the 2-3 possible objectives, I think it would be fair, good business to allow them to come back and address those specifically. It would probably not be in their best interest to go through from A to Z again. I think they know the key points.
Do we have a motion?
I have one more clarification question for our attorney. So bringing this back for a continuance, I guess, if you will, rather than a new process, being quasi-judicial and us being able to base our decisions on what's presented to us in that setting, we are able to utilize the information, concerns, feedback, comments, thoughts, discussion from the initial public hearing in the continuance of that.
That would be the expectation.
I can't believe I'm suggesting this, but is this something that we might be able to add in discussion in our executive session?
I think we could. If you would like to make a motion
Do you
for
think
that.
that would be beneficial at all?
No, I think that would
No.
end up putting it off, and we'd still have
okay.
it hanging out there, because we
Okay.
wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
All
The motion before the board presently is whether to grant the developer's request for a continuance, and the continuance is available pursuant to Town Code Section 1.16140C. And they have the right to a continuance, but it's under the discretion, granting a continuance is under the discretion of the board. And following the quasi judicial model, it's very common for judges to do this kind of thing.
I'd like to make a motion to grant the applicant's motion for continuance and reset and renotice public hearing for November 8th with the town, 2019 with the town of Monmouth. My apologies.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
No.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
No.
That motion passes 5-2. Next discussion item, Mr. Rivera, were you finished at that point?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Tharnish, 3-inch water tap located at town water tank.
Yes, good evening, Board. What you have before you now is a letter that was drafted, that I drafted, and has been reviewed by the town attorney. Made some minor changes. This has to do with a option contract, I believe, that was dated 1977. It was approved through an ordinance by the previous board at that time. And the land we're talking about here is land where our current water tank sits. And part of that agreement was Mountain View Feed and Grain gave that property in exchange for a 3-inch water tap at some point in the future. Well, the future has come. They've come to ask for that. It is stated in their option contract. There's really no argument about the town's obligation to supply that 3-inch tap. And there are limits on it, basically up to not to exceed 20,000 gallons per day, or in total 5 million gallons per year, and for commercial use with a minor exception for an existing house that is currently on that property. So what we wanted to do is bring this before you since it concerns a transaction and the fact that this will incur us supplying water to a parcel of land that is currently outside the boundaries of the town. We've had discussions with the owner of that land on several different occasions. I think we're at the point where this letter is before you so you can see what's in it. And I'm ready to answer any questions concerning that. And town attorney, if you choose.
One thing it doesn't clarify, we're just providing them the tap, and I know it's all, this is from long before, but do they pay their water bill the same as the rest of us?
They have to pay, according to that, the same rates that are currently in force for the usage. They're not paying a tap fee.
Right.
They have a guaranteed tap. And then there will be a meter installed, and then it's up to how they develop that property. I think what they're really looking for is to sell that property to some kind of development in the future. And then based on the water restrictions that are on that will determine to the extent that that development could occur.
Is there any negative impact to this?
It is within our capacity to serve that. Not really a negative impact. There's more or less just, if they were to use that kind of amount, it would be one of our bigger users. If they got to that point. That's typically about the same amount of usage that our Synthes, well, I forget what it's called now, but the corporation at the south end of Mitchell. That's typically what their demand is.
But they don't have anything already pending, right? They're just discussing.
No, I think they've had discussions with several developers, and I think they're waiting for us to present this letter. And I could see how that could be something they could use to maybe attract a developer of some kind.
Now, if they put in a commercial, will they pay commercial rates, or is it currently just gonna be charged at residential rates?
Well, there's no difference in our rates between commercial and industrial. It's all based upon the size of the line.
Okay.
So whatever the demand is would determine their monthly fee once they start using water. And I think that states that in their contract that they're not to be charged until they actually start using water.
Any other questions from the board?
If I could highlight one aspect of this that I think is important for the board to have clearly in its view, is that this is a contract from 1977, and basically the components of the contract are such that the landowner conveyed to the town the present site of the water tank over off of Beacon Hill, and in exchange, the town conveyed to the landowner a 3-inch tap, which is a very valuable asset. There is language in the option contract from 1977, and I think that I have conferred with Mr. Cross about this, and we're both in agreement that the town has these obligations, but the devil's in the details. And the option and contract has some language in it that basically says something to the effect of that the water user will be treated like every other water user for the town of Monument. And in so doing, every other water user for the town of Monument has to dedicate their subsurface water rights. And that's been the issue in negotiations with the landowners to this point. So the purpose of the letter is to basically, I think, my understanding from Mr. Tharnish is to allow the landowner to basically identify this as an asset that is associated with the property, and at the same time make very clear to all involved that there's still one other big piece out there, that we have to figure out this issue about the dedication of the groundwater. And that's the intent of the letter, I believe.
So, just real quick, can you repeat that last part a little bit better? So, they get the tap fee, or the water tap, and then the outstanding water rights for the groundwater is still up for grabs?
Yes, basically, there's language in the option contract. There's actually two provisions, but the easiest one to track is there's a provision that basically says something to the effect of the landowner will be treated like, well, let me take a step back. Even though this is extraterritorial, which basically means they're not in monument, even though they're not extraterritorial, the landowner will be treated like every other customer of monument water. So that's the important piece. Every other customer of monument water has to dedicate their subsurface water. So so I think the second part of the letter is as important as the first, is that we are identifying and acknowledging this as an obligation and there's still something that we need to work through.
Right. Contract also requires the owner of Mountain View land parcel to dedicate the groundwater in the Denver Basin aquifers under property at the issuance to the town of Monument.
And are they willing to do that, Mr. Tharnish?
We've had discussions about that. I know the owner of that property is in the room. I think it's, the bottom line is when that property does develop, it makes sense that the town be in some kind of position in order to help that come along. This might be a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, one thing that we've discussed with him is, this is all the way to the county line. He owns the property all the way to the county line. And I think it'd be advantageous for the town to annex all the way up there to gain sales tax, property tax, and everything like that. There is an issue with Beacon Light Road. I'll be in negotiations and talks with the county about how to improve that road before we annex it, because we do have the ability to annex it via the road. And also we can annex that property and other properties along that road. But I think it would be adverse to the town if we did that without having the county improve the road before we do that.
But just to come back to the question my colleagues asked, that in this letter, it is absolute, it's not up for interpretation, that Monument does take ownership of that surface water. Because I apologize, because nobody's really answering the question. We're going in circles. I just want to hear yay, nay.
I would say that the town's position is that in order to, basically before the water actually flows, we get the groundwater. That would be the town's position.
So, okay, so there's no deviation. Annexation, separate topic.
Well, annexation requires dedication, but basically, the intent of the letter, if I could, is for the landowner to basically confirm the town's obligation on one regard, and the town was unwilling to confirm it without highlighting this basic area of disagreement.
Right, because my question is, if that property's sold to a developer and something else, this doesn't come back again. We're not having this topic a secondary time.
We will, at some point, we have to work through and resolve the issue of this, the dedication of the groundwater. We're just not doing that at this point.
Okay, so it's coming back.
It's coming back.
It's coming back.
That's what the letter
It's a discussion
says.
item.
That's what the letter states.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on this? No. Thank you, Mr. Tharnish. Mr. Bishop, town attorney selection.
Mr. Mayor, trustees, what was already sent out, I have the latest suggestions and changes for the town attorney search. As we move forward with the process, my want here this evening is to actually get some direction on the first two qualifications and clarification. That will allow me to finalize the job description and at least get that posted. I feel like over the next few weeks into the November meeting, that'll give us time to continue the conversation about the background checks and any other stipulations we move forward, and it'll allow us to actually start moving forward with some candidates.
Mr. Bishop, when did we start this process? I'm not holding you to a date. I'm just.
Roughly 2 months ago.
And I'm going to ask our town manager, Is this normal protocol when looking for a professional within a municipality? Months, just to determine criteria?
I have to say that I've never been through this process before for a employee of the board. For our employees, no, it doesn't take 2 months for us to get a job description down. If I was gonna hire somebody like that, it wouldn't, but for the board, we've gotta have a decision from you. You know, we need that, we need direction. I think Robert's this is the second time he's brought this to you. He just needs direction on this. We've got direction, I think, back from a couple, but we really need it from everybody, saying this is exactly what we want in the selection process for the town attorney.
And just to finish my comment, as the Mayor Pro Temp had talked about, is talking about infrastructure back in 2014, and we actually acted today, which is fantastic, but that's 5 years, and we're 2 months, and we're no further ahead today than we were 2 months ago. It would really be nice, respectful for financial and the support of our town staff if we get it done. Please.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for you, Mr. Bishop. When you say a suggestion to remove the above comment has been submitted, is it add this comment or the outline in yellow?
Everything new is going to be highlighted in yellow. That's everything I've received since the last board meeting. So those are all the changes or revisions or suggestions since the last meeting.
So a suggestion to remove the above comment,
Yes,
is
ma'am.
this the add comment that's
Yes,
there?
ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bishop, did you have
Yes, sir.
further discussion?
As we move forward, the goal tonight, like I said, would be just to get the job description posted so we can start bringing in applicants. We can fine tune any background check and go over that over the next few weeks. We do have a nice break coming up here. So the goal tonight would be to actually work through qualifications and the clarification section, and if I can get that, I can actually finalize a job description and get the position posted. So up for discussion on that is going to be the amount of years of municipal law and administrative experience. As it stands right now, we're looking at 10-plus years. The original round, we had a suggestion to move it to 15, and recently to lower it to 5.
Okay, board discussion on that item?
Is it truly 5 or is that not 8? Because if you've got municipality.
You have
And then
3
administration, doesn't that really make it 8?
Well,
No,
administrative
because
experience is vague.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you
All
could have
right.
done it concurrently,
All right.
actually.
Okay, thank you.
I honestly think whether it's 10 years of municipal law or 5 municipal laws and 3 years administrative doesn't make a difference if we find the right person.
I don't think so either.
And I think 15 is excessive, so
I'm afraid with 15, we're limiting our pool to
Exactly.
maybe possibly individuals that are looking to wrap up their career.
Possibly with 10 even.
Mr. Bishop, what do you think?
I would recommend 5 years. I think that opens up the applicant pool and gives you a much larger selection group to work from.
Are we good on that?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Done.
Next, under qualifications, you have towards the bottom a section that says add the following line. The town attorney must be skillful in managing situations requiring diplomacy, fairness, firmness, and sound judgment, and supporting human resources in the town manager as needed and providing coaching to improve staff performance and understanding applying town policies and procedures. That was recommended to be added. We did have one suggestion to remove it from this current round.
I think that would come in the interview process, but
Right.
Yeah, I don't mind removing that.
I think you're going to figure that out, Mr. Bishop.
I don't think you can, how can you actually gauge whether or not they possess
It's
that?
totally subjective.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, they're gonna,
Let's remove it.
Is the board okay with removing that portion? Okay.
And last, under clarification, is fine tuning the line to say the town attorney reports directly to the board with day-to-day management from the town manager.
Is that how our statutes are written?
I think it's written that the
That's the way it
town
works.
attorney reports to the board.
I'm not gonna be here every day to,
And then
Let the
day-to-day, so
attorney know what to
for
do.
pay, for schedule, everything, that day-to-day management as an employee to the town manager.
That's good.
and remember, the way we do it today with Joe is that he goes through me first. So,
I talk to Mr. Foreman several times a week. That makes a lot of sense.
I think all this is saying that he's aware that,
yeah.
we can phone in.
So is
So
everybody?
is it legally advisable to avoid the ordinance that talks about this?
And I don't think that there's any inconsistency between
With
those
the
two.
law?
You're good with this line? Okay.
Is the board in agreement with the yellow highlighted?
Yes.
Yes.
Tomorrow morning, please watch your email. I'll have the final job description to you and Mr. Foreman. Barring any nays on that topic, we will get it posted tomorrow, so we can start receiving applicants. Also keep an eye out for further conversation on background checks and everything along those lines. We'll fine tune it over the next few weeks.
Is anybody in need of a final, job description?
I think we should see the final one, but I don't think we should wait. I mean, we don't need to wait. I mean, I'd love to see this position filled.
So
Start
post it and email it?
by the beginning of the year.
I will get
Ideally
the final
sooner.
sent out and posted at the same time tomorrow morning.
Robert, do you have in mind as far as candidates come in your schedule, your protocol, what's gonna be next? So all the boards in agreement?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Robert will
Bishop.
get a schedule out for you. As soon as it gets us that done,
Just
he'll
in
get a
case
schedule.
somebody
to-
wants to tweak, let's do it now.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Discussion item E, CML action items. This is a amended part of the agenda. Trustee Clark, please go ahead.
Yes, the CML staff has requested for CML-initiated legislation. There are 5 items that they are discussing, and one is the affordable housing inclusionary zoning to include rental housing developments. And I am looking for input from the board, for the will of the board, on how they would like to be best represented. At the end of this meeting on October 11th, I will bring a report back to the board, letting the board know what the net results were. But I'm going to read these off, and I would love a yay or nay from each of you, if that's all right. That'd make it fast.
I think we'd like to see the actual items though. Is there legislation already for these items? Are they announcing
These are the
these
action
as a?
items, they're going to be announcing them.
So are they announcing they're for or against them, or that they're creating their own legislation?
Some they're saying they support, and I'll read that off on each
Okay.
individual one.
I think there's a little bit of expediency on this. I think we received this yesterday, and then the meeting is on Friday, right?
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
This is very quick, and I need their input.
So she needs to know what the will of the board is, and not just a personal opinion.
So the affordable housing inclusionary zoning to include rental housing development. In 1981, the General Assembly enacted legislation that prohibits counties and municipalities from enacting any ordinance that would control rent on private residential property or a private residential housing unit. In 2000, the Colorado Supreme Court prohibited the application of local land use authority for inclusionary zoning for new rental housing developments, citing that requiring a set-aside for affordable units by the town of Telluride was a form of rent control, which is prohibited in the 1981 state law. Subsequent legislation initiated by CML in 2010 created an exception for new rental developments when developers voluntarily agree to inclusionary zoning, but such voluntary agreements are rare. Staff is requesting approval for CML-initiated legislation to correct the statutes to clarify that inclusionary zoning for new rental housing developments is not a form of rent control otherwise prohibited by state law, and effectively overturn the Telluride decision. And the staff recommendation, CML-initiated legislation, that's all they have, a CML-initiated legislation. They're gonna wanna initiate it.
So they're looking to
Initiate the legislation to
turn
overturn the law.
over Telluride, which was
Prohibit.
saying that affordable housing was not rent control. Am I understanding that right?
Yes, that Telluride had said they wanted to have this housing inclusion, and which was prohibited in the 1981 state law. So they want to overturn that Telluride decision for rent control, that it's not rent control to have one of these housing developments included.
So CML is wanting to uphold the 81 law.
I think that would be correct.
Because I'm confused with some of it, but
Is there how many of these line items?
We got 1, 2, 3, 4 more.
I like, but your meeting's coming up.
October 11th, and I just got this today.
I just sent it out.
Is there any?
Sent it to her as soon as I received it.
Yeah, I'm just
Can
wondering,
we-
I'd like to read it and just absorb
Right,
it.
just to go through it. Is there any way we can send it to the board and answers have to be to her by Wednesday?
And just send it right back with 1 through 5, yay, nay.
Could you guys do that? Would you guys mind doing that?
I would
That'd
do
be-
that.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
She's not voting.
Is that-
I think she's representing the
Will
town.
that violate sunshine laws?
I'm thinking through that.
Okay, that's my quandrum today.
well, if you forward it, the same email you got, and we can provide feedback.
Do they provide it to me?
I think it would be easy to go through you,
Yeah.
but I just wanna make sure I understand it. It's not really, is it board official action or is it a policy position in support of a CML action?
That's
It's
exactly what it is.
CML initiated legislation.
So it's a
It's a policy position.
They're asking for our
Supporting-
opinion,
Our
the
support,
ta-
do
the
we
support.
Or-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's okay, but it would be better to go to Mr. Foreman. I think it's okay because
Okay,
it's
so
not.
You'll give them
I'm
all?
making the distinction that it's not quote-unquote official town action.
No.
And I believe
Yeah,
that-
none of this
I
is
believe that's a
official.
fair distinction, so I think.
Mr. Foreman, do you have an opinion on these actions?
I will send it to you tonight. As soon as I
Okay.
get back to my office, I'll send it out to you. Y'all respond back to me by Thursday at noon.
Did you
and
just
I'll
receive this?
Can
respond
we make it
Just,
Wednesday?
when did I send
Wednesday?
it to you?
Because
Yeah.
Thursday I have to go,
Yeah, can we make it Wednesday at noon?
Wednesday at noon.
because 9 o'clock Thursday.
Yeah, Wednesday at noon.
All right, so you want our feedback by Wednesday at
Last
noon?
minute.
They send it out.
Thank you.
My apologies, that's a lot too.
It is a lot.
Mr. Mayor, before we leave discussion items, can I clarify something?
Yes.
On 8B, back to Home Place Ranch, I wasn't trying to postpone what we had approved on having them come back. This is a hot item, and I respect all the trustees' opinions. What I was asking for was if we could add this to our executive session to hear out the concerns of all the board members about this upcoming and understand each person's position. That's what I was trying to ask.
Oh, I think that would, I think what's on the table when appropriate is procedural questions. However, because you're in a quasi-judicial capacity, that sounds a little bit too much like ex parte communication.
Okay,
and
I was just
all
asking.
kinds of red flags going. I
Okay,
think
no,
it'd be better to
no
go
problem.
into session
Okay.
with that.
Item 9, public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Do we have any public comment? Sir?
Like to,
If you'll give us your name and address up there.
hi, my name's Steve Fleischer, live at 1880 Del Lago. I'm commenting on an article that appeared August 29th on KKTV 11, reporting that Chief Owens had an incident of domestic violence at his home and called the Monument Police Department to run interference in what was an El Paso County jurisdiction. There was some discussion about it. I don't know what happened because nobody in the town is willing to comment to the reporters. But what is apparent from the article is that we had a police chief involved in domestic violence, tried to game the system by bringing his own policemen to handle it. And there was an apparent attempt to deny Mrs. Owens, his wife, the protection that she felt she needed when she called 911. Monument PD is growing. we don't deal with traffic tickets and barking dogs anymore. We had a dead kid a week ago. The police department has to be trusted and show absolute integrity. It is important that the town council and the board review the situation and decide if the article was correct or if there was an incident of wrongdoing. The reporters followed up on, I believe, September 11th and got no comment down the line. On the 16th, I sent letters or emails to the town council, the mayor, and the town manager. Mr. Borstein was the only one who responded. I would urge that the town take this matter seriously.
Thank you, Mr. Fleischer. Any additional comments, public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, board authorizations. An ordinance amending section 1.12.110 of Monument Municipal Code concerning when an election may be canceled. Ms. Hogan.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask the board if I could bring an ordinance to the next meeting, which would just clean up some of the language in our code which doesn't line up with state statute in the circumstances when an election can be canceled, which are if you don't have more candidates than offices to be filled, including those that have filed affidavits to be write-in candidates, and no other matters are before the board except the election of officers. Our code, we would have to wait until 19 days before the election, but the statutes allow now for that to happen 64 days before the election. So it would be, in those circumstances, I would have to continue on ordering ballots and potentially sending them out, and then have to be faced with canceling an election, and this would be more cost-effective and obviously an easier way to deal with that under those circumstances. I have the ordinance drafted, and Joe is taking a look at it too, and it would be ready for October 21st if you authorize it.
Okay with an ordinance being brought forward on
Yes.
October
Yes.
21st?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board authorization items? Seeing none, we'll move forward to town manager report. Anything additional, Mr. Foreman?
I've submitted the town manager report in the agenda in the packet. Be glad to answer any questions that you have about that.
Questions from the board in regards to the town manager report?
No, but thank you for the report.
You bet.
Very articulate.
Thank you, sir. Thanks to staff. Staff is very heavy-handed on making sure that that gets out, especially Miss Laura Hogan. So thanks to everybody. I do have one announcement to make to the board and to the public. After much deliberance and review, I'm announcing the opening of the process for selecting the police chief for the town of Monument up to an internal and external process. So we will be looking nationwide and internally for the next police chief for the town of Monument.
Thank you. Board of Trustee comments. Any comments from the board?
I just want to thank the staff because I noticed we've been getting a lot of information earlier, which is giving us time to review and articulate prior to coming to meetings. I think it's been really good.
Yeah, I'd really have to thank staff for that. We've got some new people on staff that are really pushing some of us older people to make sure that we are very forward and upfront with our information to you and making sure that you get it in a timely manner.
And not to be funny, because I wasn't thanking you, I was thanking Ms. Hogan.
That's who I was thinking too. So her and
Want to wipe that from the minutes.
I would say Erica and Madeline and the entire staff is doing that. I mean, doing a great job of getting information to the people that need it to get to you.
Good try.
Maybe we can rub some of that off on CML.
Yes, that would be great.
Right.
That would be awesome.
Any other board comments? Seeing none. Item 13, executive session. CRS 24-6-4024A for the purpose of acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real personal or other property interest, and for CRS 24-6-4024 and E for developing strategies for negotiation, instructing negotiators, and determining a process relative to matters that may be subject to negotiation regarding the purchase of property, and CRS 24-6-4024B for conferences with town attorney for the public entity for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions regarding the fund use for such a purchase. Mr. Rivera, did you have anything additional to add to that?
Yes, if you could add to that motion that if it's the board's pleasure to adjourn the meeting at the conclusion of the executive session.
Yes.
Yes. If somebody would like to make a motion to go in an executive session with an adjournment directly after.
I move to go to executive session with adjournment immediately following.
Motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Romanella?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes. We'll take a 5-minute recess and reconvene for executive session.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about this.